Unit 16, Human Immunity. Human being is surviving as well as managing dangerous toxins, virus, bacteria, microorganisms, and the danger of their own cells that turning into cancer cells, huge thanks to immune system. Immune system is consisting of cells, organs, tissues, or transplanted, and molecules that all work together to produce an immune response that protects from all harmful pathogens. The immune response recognized a threat, remember invader, reinforced mechanism, and destroyed pathogens in case it encounters again in less than 10 days. In few cases, such if the immune system initiate an attack something it shouldn't be, like its own tissue, it can last far longer, months to years, and leading to severe inflammation. Immune system is like a military divisions divided into two parts, the innate immune response and the acquired adapted immune response. The innate immune response, such cells that are non-specific, meaning they characterize between foreign invader from a human cell but don't recognize one invader from another invader. The innate response is also furiously fast, works within minutes to hours, causing fever response. Similarly to a pathogen, precisely the same way, no matter how often pathogen occurs without memory related, including physical barriers such as epithelium in the skin, gut and cilia that line the airways, as well as chemical barriers like sweat and tears in lysosome, and low pH in the stomach to keep invaders out. In comparison to adapted immune response will distinguish between friendly ones and potentially deadly bacteria with their receptor also diverse that recognize vast numbers of specific antigens. They rely on being activated so it can fully differentiate into the right of fighter for pathogen destruction in several weeks. Their great adventure is immunologic memory. Cells that are activated in the acquired immune response suffers from clonal expansion, meaning they are vastly proliferate. Each time the adapted cells spot the same pathogen, they proliferate repeatedly, resulting quicker and stronger response every time that pathogen reoccurs. Once it's eliminated, most of the clonal expanded cells died. This is called clonal deletion. Other clonal expanded remains as memory cells and will expand again if the pathogen ever reoccurs. Now it's time to meet the white blood cells or leukocytes. Hematopoiesis, an operation of forming red and white blood cells as well as platelets, and initially take place in bone marrow. Start with a multipotent hematopoietic stem cell with which develop into various cell types. Other becomes myeloid progenitor cells, whereas some turn out to be lymphoid progenitor cells. The myeloids, such neutrophils, eosinophils, basophils, mast cells, dendritic cells, macrophage, and monocytes. These all found in the blood and in the tissues, also part of the innate immune response. The neutrophils, eosinophils, and basophils are considered granulocytes because they consist of granules in their cytoplasm. Neutrophils referred as polymorphinocular cells for their nuclei cover multiple lobes. During an immune response, bone marrow produces more of neutrophil cells and use phagocytosis process that where they get closely to a pathogen engulfed and terminated in a phagosome. Neutrophils uses two types of methods using cytoplasmic granules fused with phagosome to form the phagolysosome. Phagolysosome lowering the pH by making it acidic that kills about 2% of the pathogens. Neutrophils keep engulfing more until it's full of pathogens and unleashes the oxidative burst. During an oxidative burst, neutrophils create more of extremely reactive classes oxygen, such hydrogen peroxide. These molecules initiate destroying nearby proteins and nucleic acids within the pagolysosome, resulting pathogens destroyed. In contrast to eosinophils, basophils, and mast cells are exceedingly rare. They contain granules that cover histamine and other pro-inflammatory molecules. Eosinophils are phagocytic, dyes in eosine stained in pink, best known for fighting using exocytosis of toxic compound including nitric oxide and cytotoxic enzyme onto the surface of their targets, huge and awkward such as vermifuges parasites, and produce molecules that able to poke holes in the external layer of the helminths. Besides, these cells participate in allergic reactions such as atopic dermatitis and hay fever, known as allergic rhinitis. Eosinophils degranulates, causes an inflammatory reaction. Next, the basophils. Unlike neutrophils, basophils are non-phagocytic, dye and stain blue hematoxylin. On the other hand, they have granules that cover histamine and other pro-inflammatory molecules. Thus, they are significant in initiating allergic responses. Lastly, there are the mast cells, which are live in tissue and in the blood, similarly to basophils, non-phagocytic and are also involved in allergic responses. Next up, the monocyte, macrophage, and dendritic cells. They engulf pathogens, present antigens, as well as secrete cytokines, which are tiny particles that attract immune cells to the sites. Monocytes only in the blood and transport via tissue and differentiate into macrophage, which remain in tissues and not in the blood. Dendritic cells normally are found in areas that are in contact with most prototypical external antigen-presenting cells, such as skin, epithelium, or gastrointestinal mucosa. During young and immature, dendritic cell is excellent at phagocytosis, constantly engulfing large amount of protein located in interstitial fluid. It's a life-changing when dendritic cell kills pathogen and break up its proteins into amino acid chains. Antigen process is connected to innate and adapted immune system, something that made by dendritic cell, macrophage, as well as monocytes, indicated them as antigen-presenting cells. Dendritic cells is excellent at this presentation because they are the only cells that live where the pathogens entry via epithelium such as skin, airways, and guts, and are the only cells that able to circulate from those tissues to lymph nodes where T cells flows. Now, only T cells with a receptor that can attach to the specific shape of the antigen will be priming, similarly to how a keys will only snap to a specific shape. However, T cell can only spot their antigen, plus obtainable on major histocompatibility complex, so the antigen-presenting cells will prime the antigen on an HLA or MHC molecules and show it to T cells. And when the right T cells comes beside, it binds. Natural killer, B cell, helper T cells, regulatory T cells, and cytotoxic T cells are lymphocyte ultimate blood group. B and helper T cells are made up the adapted immune response, and natural killer and B cell is part of the innate immune response and complete their development in the bone marrow, where some lymphoid progenitor cells transport to the thymus where they develop into cells. Lymphocytes transport in and out of the tissue and in the bloodstream. Natural killer cells are huge lymphocytes which with granules and are targeting cells infected with intracellular organisms, such viruses as well as cancer or tumor cells. Natural killer cells destroy their target cells by releasing granules. These particles contain some molecules that punch hole in the target cell's membrane by attaching directly to the phospholipid producing pores and the same that get inside the cell and cause target cells to suffer to apoptosis, program dead cells. B and T cell bind directly only antigen-specific shape by their receptor at their surface. B cells do not need antigen to be presented to them on an NHLA. When B cell charge the antigen onto the MHC2, internalizing, decaying, and presented to T cells. B cells activated in plasma cell and secreted holes and lots of antibodies. The immunoglobulins distribute through plasma and take several weeks to peak, and also non-cellular part of blood which attacking and staining for elimination because antibodies are not bound to cells and spontaneously float in the blood, also called humoral immunity. Finally, the lymphoid-mediated immunity. T cells activated the regulatory T cell and seize the immune response and maintain homeostasis of the immune system. Two types of T cells, CD4 plus T and CD8 plus T cells. Hundreds of clusters of differentiation, useful marker which are CD3 plus and CD4 plus are helper cells because they secrete cytokines that helps coordinate the efforts of macrophage. B and helper T cells are CD3 plus and CD8 plus are cytotoxic T cells because they destroy similarly to how natural killer cells does, with one major difference. CD8 plus T cells only kills with specific antigens, while natural killer cells are not specific in who they eliminated. Herd immunity is about the highest percentage of the population are vaccinated. For instance, 19 out of each 20 people requires to be vaccinated against measles or rubella. When population are protected by vaccination effectively, it will stop diseases from spreading. Furthermore, it helps the body remember a microorganisms and be able to fight it off when they reoccur again. However, vaccines are not foolproof and do not guarantee completely protection from illnesses because sometimes host immunity system simply doesn't respond accurately. Example, people with lower immunity such diabetes with steroid, with AIDS, HIV, chemotherapy. Also, babies, elderly people, pregnant women, it can possess serious risk and affect fertility and sperm count. Range factor affecting vaccine uptake, such as how person understand, weigh up benefits, risk, information, and guidance about the vaccines, as well as individuals' beliefs and values and other practical considerations, such timing, availability, and location, also childcare duties, forgetting appointments, as well as individual costs associated with example transport or work time off. Moreover, media and digital obtainable and accessible information, such as language barriers, changing location, inaccurate NHS records. Consequently, there is a way to improve it by offering appointment reminder, flexible time, signposting vaccine, example, pharmacies and hospital encourage specialists across healthcare system to make use of the opportunity to offer discussed vaccination, example, GP and midwife routine checks. Finally, healthcare specialist information and training up to date about the vaccines. Public health organizations use different approach to increase participation in vaccination programs, such information and educational campaign and incentivize programs or rules that make vaccination required or a condition of access to institutions, services, or employment. Ethical respect for public health organizations such promote good health and reduce the load of diseases. Individual balance, community and broader public interest, fair and effective use of public resource, and international obligation and worldwide health security. An autoimmune disease is the outcome of the immune system attack the body instead of protecting it, such as SLE, RA, and MS. SLE, an autoimmune disorder caused by inflammation throughout the body, such joints, skin, blood vessel, and organs, such kidneys. Lupus, with a combination of genetics, hormones, and environmental factors are contributed. There is no cure for SLE. However, medical interventions and lifestyle can aid to control it. Signs and symptoms such fatigue, skin rashes, fever, swelling, and pain joints. Some flares and occurs very often. Example, years apart, also known as remission. Three types of SLE: cutaneous, meaning skin lupus, such rash and lesion; drug and direct, overreacting to particular medicines with within 3 to 6 months symptoms; neonatal possibly adopted from a mother with SLE. RA, an autoimmune and inflammation disorder, meaning immune system attacks healthy cells by mistakes, causing pain, swelling, as well as inflammation in the affected more joints at once, such wrist, knees, and joint tissues. Genetic and environmental factors can increase the risk of developing the disease. Characteristics that highly increase, such age, sex, genetics, inherited traits, smoking, history of live births, early exposure, and obesity. Breastfeeding can reduce the risk of RA. RA is diagnosed through physical and laboratory tests by a rheumatologist expert within 6 months of symptoms such joint damage, diagnosis and treatment to suppress diseases, progression, and control inflammation. Furthermore, premature heart disease, higher risk of developing other chronic disease such heart and diabetes disorder with RA, required focus and reduction heart disease factors such stop smoking and lose weight, obesity with RA, risk and factor high blood pressures and cholesterol, as well as obesity develop chronic conditions such as heart disease, diabetes. On the other hand, obese with RA, few beneficial treatment medical compound to those RA who are not obese. MS is an inflammation disease which completely affects the white matter of the CNS. These irregularities involve immunoregulatory defects in T cell function that are associated with T and B cell hyperactivity. T cells abnormality in MS, similar to those observed in other autoimmune diseases such as systemic lupus erythematosus and RA, and that the immunoregulatory defects in the blood of MS appears to be accompanied by the rapid migration of activated T cells from peripheral blood to the CNS. Although this is a contained immune response within the CNS, immune abnormalities that correlated activity are also found in the peripheral immune of the MS. CNS inflammatory response is linked to dependent upon the peripheral immune compartment. Treatment such stem cell therapy an advantage, such as regulate the immune system, repair damaged neuron, provides mesenchymal cells in umbilical cord tissue, repair and regenerate tissue, IV cell therapy, as well as a stabilization of the condition.